Right, thanks again for joining us. You're still watching TVC Breakfast, and the Nigerian Federal Government has announced its intention to take action against those who it says are sabotaging the country's economy and hindering its effort to provide better living conditions for the people. Now, this statement was made by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in a press release issued on Friday in Abuja, made available to TVC News, where the minister highlighted that President Bola Tinubu has made significant decisions since taking office, particularly about his economic vision for Nigeria. And one of these critical decisions that he says the president made was the immediate discontinuation of petrol subsidies. The president has promised to redirect the savings resulting from the subsidy removal into critical investment in public infrastructure, as well as in education, healthcare, and social welfare. The minister says the removal of the subsidy has also resulted in a significant surge in monthly allocations to the states for the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee. Well, opposition parties have criticized the president's decision to remove the subsidy, but the minister dismissed their claims as unpatriotic. Well, let's talk about this stance of the federal government now, talking about these saboteurs of the country's economy. We have with us public affairs analyst and a lawyer, Omoruyi Edoigiawerie. Thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. And it's been a while. Well, good to see you again.
Thank you.
But economic saboteurs hampering food security, food accessibility, basically. And this news have been reverberating over the past weeks. I wonder what you make of this now that the federal government has said it's now going to come down hard on these groups of persons.
Well, I think that the problem that we seem to face, while the challenges appear a bit novel, they probably, we've had it coming with our approach to issues and the fact that we have probably not really looked more intentionally around addressing these issues. I said this thing here at the onset of this administration, and I said our financial regulators must now do a bit more fiscal engineering, right? We've got to look beyond doing things the way we're used to doing it, right? And typically they say, look, doing something the same way and expecting a different result means insanity, right? So how are things being done today? Right, I know that there is what I call deceptive pricing amongst businesses, but really why? In economics, one of the fundamental principles of economics is that demand will drive pricing, right? Pricing is a product of demand and supply. How much product do you have? What is the demand for the product? When the demand shoots up and the product reduces, the price goes up, right? Now, we have a bit of, I will call, again, an unpatriotic approach to some of this food pricing and economic pricing. Everyone seems to be hiding behind the dollar and, you know, making claims. I was just driving here, I read a meme of someone saying, oh, his landlord has come and increased price because the dollar has gone up, right? But you see, why does everyone have the dollar as an excuse? That's a question we should ask ourselves. Why is customs charging tariffs in dollars? When you make something attractive and that thing continues to be the hedge around which people can now hide behind to commit all forms of action, right? And you do not remove it from the picture, and then you go after people, you know, who are taking advantage of a problem that you have refused or failed to remove, you just realize that you just be dancing around the issues, right? Why is dollar so attractive? I've never seen anywhere in the world, right, where you buy FX the way you buy it in Nigeria. On every corner of the road, you see people buying dollars. I was in Paris. I needed to change some money, right? And I had to go by train to the city center. And even at the city center, they just had about 4 accredited agents, right? Where you go, and the scrutiny is high. They want to see your passport, they want to see your ticket, and and then they change it. The rates are clear, no ambiguity. You don't see people milling around and stacking naira all over your face, right? We have made the dollar a commodity for investment.
Who made that a commodity for investment? Is it due to the way our politicians, started using it, or the way artists, those who in the entertainment world, started using it, or Nigerians generally? And at the same time, are you also buying to the advice given by one of the senators' network, who saying that federal government should prohibit the use of dollars?
We don't have any business doing certain things using the dollar as a benchmark. Remember, so what's happening today is that people are buying the dollar as an investment. And so you're stacking up dollars, you're using naira to buy dollar as an investment. What will now happen is that you will increasingly have a naira that is worthless because you're using more to buy less. And so you continue to depreciate naira. Remember, our importation is faulty. Our exportation is literally non-existent. And so we're not, the only way, right, you could have a situation where our naira is short up, and I have said it here, and I will continue to say it here, is when we look at production for exports. But right now, we even have a more dire issue. We need food sufficiency.
Right.
We need to be able to eat. We need to be able to survive, right? What are the immediate things to do? Boost local production, ease importation, ease access to import. Let import food so that can balance.
There you go again.
Strains
on the dollar.
So get what I'm talking about now. We're talking about food sufficiency, boost local production, right? Give support to local production, but also, can we produce enough to take care of our numbers? Now we have over 200 million people. And this is a dire situation. And we must, when government starts bringing out grains, right? And you know that the situation is dire. It means that the output is not enough for consumption. So government is now having to go into its reserve, right? So what that means is that we've got to now make this look like a state of emergency approach. State of emergency approach means support local production to actively scale, but also is some form of import of certain necessities, right? And cut the tariffs, bring the tariffs down, bring those to shore up and support and create a bit of a balance.
Some are even advocating that in terms of calls like you have just made in easing imports, importation
import of essential.
Yes. And do you subscribe that cement should be added to it?
So really, when you look at the challenge around the cement space, I really don't like to speak too much to it, because you look at people who today, over time, have benefited immensely from waivers and support from government, and now are making their products, which are produced indigenously, out of the reach of the common man. I can't understand it. I cannot understand it. Because what are the essence of the waivers and the support that you have received over time from government? That's right. But the president had a meeting with key private sector leaders, and we hope that will yield fruit. But really, cement is not our problem. Our problem is rice, garri, yam, plantain,
and those,
bread.
And even those
let me make you understand. Right. Now, who chop go think of shelter?
Yes.
So let's look at the fact that food sufficiency has become an emergency.
Absolutely.
So how do we fix that?
You've already laid the foundation of even what is even concerning you is that the government has now said it's going to release grain reserves now, you know, to feed the people. If you don't
those
know,
reserves have to be restocked,
if
you know.
you don't know of any other, you know, pointer to the emergency on our hands, that might just be the pointer. But, you know, security is still the problem, because people say we have these things in abundance. We have what it takes to feed the country, but the farms, the state, the security of farmers, you know, going out to farm for daily living and indeed to feed the country is, you know, still a big worry.
Yeah, so I said this in an interview in another station 2 weeks ago. I said, when you're talking of ease of doing business, security is a key indicator to the ease of doing business, right? The fact that you do not have a system in place where there is some semblance of security to move around creates a problem.
Right.
Remember, we have 3 key issues when it comes to the agricultural supply chain. You have security, you have the logistic infrastructure, and you have road network. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, government must now attack these issues intentionally. And I use the word intentionally. You cannot continue to do things in a particular way. So let's attack it intentionally. Security must now be beefed up in the food major spots, right? Or what you can call the melting pots of our food production in this country, to create that buffer, that security buffer for them, so that farmers can go to farm, right? So that we can produce more and then supply. The next thing is to fix the agricultural supply chain. I do not understand why we don't have a dedicated rail system from these major food hubs to the strategic markets. And until we do these things, you will continue to have road transport workers profit off the challenge, the infrastructure challenge we have. And they tell you, oh, it cost me XYZ to bring in a truck of food. So that has, the ripple effect has to go down. Go to these food points. What you will see is that the price has not astronomically gone up. Maybe a little increase here and there, but it is that supply chain that continues to cut deep into the actual end user price. So fix that supply chain. Let's have, you know, that rail. Why can't we have a rail from Taraba bringing yams straight to Abuja, straight to Port Harcourt, Lagos, Aba, and the likes, and back? Why can't we have tomatoes from Kanu? Until these things are done, we would be cherry-picking the solutions. Road network, we have over 200,000 kilometers of roads. Only barely 60,000 are arable. Are good enough for movement. That's not even up to 50%.
But out of this, you know, before now, all of these have been there before, you know, the issue of price of food going up and all of that. But some were said to be taking these foods, you know, this food produce to other countries like Niger, you know, other countries like that, and therefore also the middlemen, is a middleman or what they call them, they bought up, you know, all of those foods, all of those food items and store them up. Those, you know, referred to as orders. One of the reasons why some warehouses were, you know, busted by the federal government. So what would you say to this? Are they not part of the saboteurs?
So when you see things like this, you know that there's a failure of regulation. When things like this happen, it's a sign that there's a failure in regulation. Why do we have ministries of agriculture? What is the essence of a ministry of agriculture? The primary duty is to ensure food sufficiency and to plug all the leaks. So there should have been a proper arrangement in place to nip these things in the bud. You know, we can't continue to pretend as if these problems have just fallen on us overnight. Repeated bad behavior leads you to a catastrophic result. And that's what has happened here. So you've seen a failure of regulation that has now grown into a monster that is now attempting to eat up the entire country.
Right.
You can't have food production How are they moving? Are they disappearing into the night? How are these things moving? Right? We saw a video of food trucks being turned back from a particular point. I think they were taking them out of the country and all that, right? That's just one in the number. So how are these things happening?
Yeah, that's a function of being patriotic to your own country,
right?
In the first place. So
you've got to realize that, look, this issue of sabotage and the challenges that come around it is three-layered, from government to you and I, right? I was cracking a joke with a friend, and we were talking about this dollar, and he said, "Oh, I said, be the change you want to be. So if you want to go change dollar, change at 500 naira." He looked at me and said, "Why?" I said, "Then how will we fix this thing?" Right? And then another big challenge is that, do you know that markets fall within the residual, constitutionally, right? Fall within the residual responsibility of the local governments.
Yeah.
And we have seen in the last 15 years a consistent failure of this third level of government. Local government have failed. They become errand boys in the hands of governors. And our local government system today is literally non-existent. And that symbiotic relationship between government and the markets to ensure that the end user, you and I, gets good value, is failing.
You spoke earlier on about, perhaps calling for the lifting of certain restrictions in terms of, importation restrictions on certain commodities.
Yes.
So, okay, cement might not be big on your mind, so to speak, but what would fit into this category you're calling for?
Food.
Okay, and
rice,
which commodities?
Rice,
okay.
Flour, sugar, because we consume a lot of bread, and all that, maybe milk. But you see, the importation must be a buffer for local production. What am I saying? You must boost local production substantially.
That should be the main focus.
It must be the main focus. And then importation should be, let's subsidize, let's help, let's try to alleviate, right? But if you bring importation as a substitute, and that has always been our problem, where we substitute instead of giving a buffer. We must stop giving buffers. We must stop substituting, right? It must be a buffer to local production. And listen, if you do the maths, for instance, you look at how much, for instance, how much chicken we consume, right? And you see that the entire country, all the indigenous poultry producers can only produce for barely 10% of our population. Barely 10%, barely 2 million birds.
Consumers, right.
And you have a country of over 200 million people. So that difference. But we now have to start pushing for indigenous production to go up to 50, 60%. And then this importation comes in as a buffer. And by the time we attain food sufficiency, then you can now soft pedal on the importation.
Still talking about saboteurs, recently the EFCC raided, the offices of the Bureau de Change operators in different parts of the country, Abuja, Ibadan, etc. And, almost immediately after, we started seeing the naira, coming down, and then the following day, it started going up again. But they said that, gains have been recorded and all of that. It has received different backlashes from, different, people saying that wasn't the way to go. Others said, okay, because of what they've been doing. And now CBN is also introducing the minimum capital that they are supposed to start with, I think about 2 billion naira or thereabouts. What do you see to all of this?
So, it hurts me every time we dance around the dollar, right? But when you look at this, what are the traditional banks doing? Because they wear suit and tie and they're inside one air-conditioned office. What level of regulation, oversight, is being viewed? These guys are stacking dollars in their vaults.
So they're complicit.
And they are not selling. So you should be able to walk into a bank and say, oh, I want to buy $200. I want to buy $500. Does that happen today? In how many banks will be able to sell to you? The Bureau de Change over time have provided a solution to a need, ease of access to FX. And that is because the traditional banking financial institutions that should have provided that service failed and are consistently failing. And in fact, if you read, as I do, you will find that a lot of them, especially some of their employees, are in cohorts with the black market.
All right.
So you walk into a bank,
right,
and they say to you, oh, go buy from that XYZ.
That's right.
All right, we've come to the end of the allotted time for this interview. Time has indeed run out. I wanted to ask about the price control, if that could be a possible solution to the to commodities availability and all of that. But no more time, no more time. Omoruyi Edoigiawerie. Thank you very much for speaking with us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your contributions on the program. And that's our program. That's our 7 on TVC Breakfast this morning. And just before we go, a quick reminder that all the views and reactions of all our resource persons on the program are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. From all of us here, thanks a lot for watching. And let's do this again on Tuesday.